All right, Leviticus chapter 4, learning about some different types of offerings that have been given. So some really interesting distinctions on these offerings we're going to talk about today, because this is more of a sin offering. We've had burnt offerings, peace offerings, meat offerings, but now this is a sin offering, so a different type of offering, and a few different things for us to learn in here as well. Verse 1, the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, saying, If a soul shall sin through ignorance against any of the commandments of the Lord concerning things which ought not to be done, and shall do against any of them. So I want to clarify something here in verse 2. Basically, it says in here, if a soul shall sin through ignorance usually is interpreted as they didn't know they did something wrong. But if you look at the Hebrew words that are used in this, it actually means basically if you fall short of where you're supposed to be, or you don't do what you're supposed to do as well. So it's not just, I didn't know that law was there. This is also if you broke something or didn't keep your covenant the whole way, that is covered in here and considered also. Verse 3, if the priest that is anointed do sin according to the sin of the people, then let him bring for his sin which he has sinned a young bullock without blemish unto the Lord for a sin offering. So this is a sin offering. Verse 4, he shall bring the bullock unto the door of the tabernacle of the congregation before the Lord, and shall lay his hand upon the bullock's head and kill the bullock before the Lord. We've looked at that before, dealing with the burnt offerings and the peace offerings. Verse 5, and the priest that is anointed shall take of the bullock's blood and bring it to the tabernacle of the congregation. And the priest shall dip his finger in the blood and sprinkle the blood 7 times before the Lord, before the veil of the sanctuary. So this is in the inner tabernacle, basically the holy place. That you remember, there's the tabernacle of the congregation, which is the large, big area. Then inside there's a small building that was created. That is the holy place, and that's divided into 2. So we have the holy place and the most holy place where the Ark of the Covenant was kept. And then in the holy place is where the candles and the incense was burned, and the shewbread, and then the altar of incense was put in there, a smaller altar with the 4 horns. So you're going to take the blood of the sin offering. So this isn't the free will offering, basically, or a peace offering of things. This is if you've committed a sin, you didn't keep your covenant, you didn't fulfill it all the way, or you broke it, you have to offer this up. And then the priest would take this blood, go to the altar inside that tabernacle. So we're not on the outside altar, the inside altar, and would drip the blood 7 times on the horns, basically, in that altar over there. And that's sprinkle the blood 7 times before the Lord, before the veil of the sanctuary. So they would put this up there and sprinkle this out. Now, why 7? What's the significance of 7? Well, the 7 in I want to say numerology, but I'm not 100% sure if that's the right discipline. But if you study the symbolism of numbers, 7 usually means like heaven or wholeness. In fact, the word for 7 in Hebrew means wholeness. And some people speculate that they got that because the world was created in 7 days, or 7 periods of creation was the perfection of the creation. So that's where they get the 7 from, and it became an important part of these ordinances as well. So they sprinkled this 7 times before the Lord, before the veil of the sanctuary. Verse 7, the priest shall put some of the blood upon the horns of the altar of sweet incense before the Lord. So when they talk about before the Lord, that's kind of what they're talking about, is in front of that veil, which is in the tabernacle of the congregation, and shall pour all the blood of the bullock at the bottom of the altar of the burnt offering, which is at the door of the tabernacle of the congregation. So they go in, they sprinkle some blood 7 times in front of the veil, they put some blood on the horns of the burnt incense altar, then they put the rest of the blood at the other altar that's outside, the bigger one. Verse 8, he shall take off from it all the fat of the bullock for the sin offering, the fat that covereth the inwards, and the fat that is upon the inwards. So again, remember, From the last chapter, we learned that the fat and the blood is God's. That's not for the people to consume. That is kept to offer these sacrifices to God. Verse 10, as it was taken off from the bullock of the sacrifice. Verse 9, the kidneys, the fat there is, the flanks, the caul above the liver with the kidneys, all of that shall be taken away. It was taken off from the bullock of the sacrifice of peace offerings. So same as the peace offerings. And the priest shall burn them upon the altar of the burnt offering. Verse 11, and the skin of the bullock and all his flesh with his head, with his legs, his inwards, and his dung, even the whole bullock shall he carry forth without the camp unto a clean place, where the ashes are poured out, and burn him on the wood with fire. Where the ashes are poured out shall he be burnt. So they're carrying this out, and they're burning the rest of the animal outside the area of the Israelites. So you go outside that area, and then you burn them in an area where you're going to dump all the ashes from the other fires and other things. You burn them over there. So this is something that's really interesting. There's a really good quote in this book, Law of the Offerings. This guy, the last name of Jukes, wrote this book, really interesting. He says, hitherto we have met no thought of sin in the offerings. The burnt offering, the meat offering, and the peace offering, much as they differed, were yet alike in this, that in each of them the offering was the presentation of something which was sweet to Jehovah, an oblation to satisfy his holy requirements, and in the acceptance of which he found grateful satisfaction. So he's saying the burnt offering, the meat offering, the peace offering were more forward-thinking offerings. I am sacrificing this to God. I'm offering this to God type of thing. Like I'm keeping his commandments. I'm going in this direction, in a forward motion towards God. Whereas the sin offering is different. But here in the sin and trespass offerings, we read of sin in connection with the offering. Here is confessed sin, judged sin, sin requiring sacrifice and bloodshedding, yet sin atoned for, blotted out, and pardoned. The sin offering shows that sin has been judged, and that therefore the sense of sin, if we believe, need not shake our sense of safety. Sin is indeed here preeminently shown to be exceeding sinful, exceeding hateful, exceeding evil before God. Yet it is also shown to have been perfectly met by sacrifice, perfectly borne, perfectly judged, perfectly atoned for. The sweet savor offerings are, as we know, Christ in perfectness, offering himself for us to God without sin. The others, on the contrary, as we shall see, represent him as offering himself as our representative for sin. So there's these two types of offerings that happen. Some are the more proactive offerings, the meat offering, the burnt offering, the peace offering, and then there's these more, I'd almost say a retroactive offering where we have committed sin, we've gone away from God, and now we're trying to get back with God. So instead of staying in favor with God, we're trying to get back because we've lost ground, we got to get back. So hope that makes sense. Leave some comments in the comment section if you have other questions or thoughts and ideas on how that would work. Verse 13, and if the whole congregation of Israel sin through ignorance, that same thing, they fall short, and the thing be hid from the eyes of the assembly, and they have done somewhat against any of the commandments of the Lord, concerning things which should not be done, and are guilty. When the sin which they have sinned against it is known, then the congregation shall offer a young bullock for the sin, bring him before the tabernacle of the congregation, and the elders of the congregation shall lay their hands upon the head of the bullock before the Lord, and the bullock shall be killed before the Lord. And the priest that is anointed shall bring of the bullock's blood to the tabernacle of the congregation. So, and this is going through that same idea of they dip the finger, they sprinkle it 7 times before the Lord, before the veil. Then they put it on the altars, the blood on the altars, the horns of the altar, and then they go back to the burnt offering altar outside. Take the fat, burn upon the altar, shall do with the bullock as he did with the other bullock for sin offering. So they're going to take it outside the city area, the community area, away from everybody, to clean space where they're usually dumping the ashes from fires, and then they burn the rest of it there. So this is interesting because this is basically if the whole group sins, they kind of, everybody kind of ends up dealing with the sin. Maybe they missed an ordinance, or something like that. Then they do one sacrifice that covers all of them, basically. They don't all have to do individual ones. That'd be crazy, because like the children of Israel was, I think, like 1 or 2 million people. So that'd be an insane amount of sacrifices that you'd have to do. So they did one for everybody. If it was a sin that everybody was dealing with at the same time, or they all committed together, then they would do one sacrifice to cover them all, basically. He shall do it. I read that. Verse 21, he shall carry the bullock without the camp. Oh, we talked about that. 22, when a ruler hath sinned and done somewhat through ignorance against any of the commandments of the Lord his God, concerning things which should not be done, and is guilty, or if his sin, wherein he has sinned, come to his knowledge, he shall bring his offering, a kid of the goats, a male without blemish. So he has to bring, if a ruler sins, he has to bring a goat. He shall lay his hand upon the head of the goat and kill it in the place where they kill the burnt offering before the Lord. It is a sin offering. And then they go through and talk about this same thing, basically. So, but for the ruler, it's a goat, basically, not a bullock. Okay, verse 27, if any one of the common people sin through ignorance, which he doeth somewhat against any of the commandments of the Lord, and he be guilty, or if his sin which he has sinned come to his knowledge, then he shall bring his offering, a kid of the goats, a female without blemish, for his sin which he hath sinned. And then they go through the same thing. So if it's a common person and they sin, and they do it unknowingly, then it's a female goat without blemish that is used for that sin, basically, for that sin offering. So again, this is kind of going, okay, we did something wrong and we're trying to get back. Whereas the other offerings were more of how do we keep in the graces of God. This one's kind of going, we fell backwards, now we've got to come back up. Basically is what it is. So it's a different type of offering used for different reasons, basically, is what it's there to cover and help us with. So thanks for watching. I really hope you're enjoying these. Love to hear comments in the comment section, what you think about these videos, or any questions you might have, and to look forward to seeing you in the next chapter.